Hello, uh, this is Pastor Joe, and today we're going to talk about what is your Jordan. What is your Jordan? This is the lesson for Sunday, July 30th. Lesson for Sunday, July 30th. What is your Jordan? Okay, going forward, the secondary is be strong and of good courage. Be strong and of good courage. Want to make sure that you remember that because that is a subtopic for today. Be strong and of good courage. The lesson objective is to understand that we all have challenges that we must face, but the victory is on the other side. That's the most important part of this, is that the victory is not on this side of Jordan. The victory is on the other side of Jordan. And we have several scriptures, Joshua 1 through 9, Proverbs 3, 6, and Isaiah 58:11 that we're going to be using today as a part of this lesson. When we have challenges, we oftentimes become fearful and hesitate, or we're like a deer in a headlight. We're like a deer in a headlight. And if you know what a deer in a headlight is that you've been riding down the road and if you see a deer, the deer just freezes and stops. I know because I've hit a deer. Didn't like it, but I've hit a deer. Okay, I've had that accident. But deers will stop and freeze. That's what we do sometimes when we are afraid. We don't know what to do. So we freeze up and do nothing. And that's not what we should be doing. The fact of the matter is that there is nothing to fear but fear itself. This was said by Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was the only president of the United States that was elected 4 times as president. Okay? And since then, there's a constitutional amendment that allows only 2 times. But at the time that he was elected 4 times, and he used that term, nothing to fear but fear itself. And that is applicable today because oftentimes we are afraid to go outside of our comfort zone. We are afraid of failing, so we do nothing. And that's not consistent with what the Bible says because we should not be afraid of anything. Now just think of a moment and think about something that you are afraid of. Okay. And why is it that you have not taken the next step? What keeps you from getting that blessing that God has because you are afraid to step out? So let's talk about that a little more. God told Joshua, God is telling us, be strong and of good courage. You ever seen the movie the Wizard of Oz? Okay, and it has the lion and the Tin Man and Scarecrow. And the lion was afraid of everything throughout the movie until he received courage. And when he received courage, he was good to go. It's the same with us. When we are afraid, we do absolutely nothing. We cower. But when we have courage, then we can run like a lion. And that's what it's about. It's about being strong and of good courage. Joshua 1:1-6 says, after the death of Moses, servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses is aged. Moses, my son, is dead. Now then you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon and from the great rivers to the Euphrates, all the Hittite countries, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. He goes on to say, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and courageous. God made a promise to Joshua. He said that he is going to deliver them the land. He also provided words of encouragement to Joshua. And we'll come back to talk about that a little bit. Joshua 1, 7 and 9 says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it from the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Now let's stop a minute. When we're in school, we learn to take notes. And basically two primary times that you take notes in a class. And you don't write everything the professor says. You don't do that. But you do have prompts to help you to understand when to write notes and when not to. One of those prompts is when the professor speaks up louder. It's trying to get your attention. She is trying to get your attention. You know that whatever they are talking about is important, and you need to write it down because you may see it again on the exam. What's the second prompt? The second prompt is when they say something more than once. When they say something more than once. We find that here. Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's go back here. It's verse 6. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Verse 7. Be strong and very courageous. Okay. And then verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. And then he follows up with, do not be afraid. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that it's important. It tells us that we need to write it down. Not on paper, write it down in our heart. Write it down in our heart. Write it down in our mind so that we don't forget that we are to be strong and very courageous. And that to note that that's important. We need to write it down. Now, there are some expectations that come to this promise. An example is that if a child is sitting at the table and mom has a piece of chocolate cake. And the child sees the chocolate cake and the child wants the chocolate cake. Okay, he wants it. Okay. Mom says you got to eat your dinner first. You got to eat your vegetables first before you get to the cake. That's the expectation. So the promise is that you're going to get, the child's going to get the chocolate cake. The expectation is that the child will eat all of the vegetables. Okay. Now, it's the same here with God and Joshua. God has promised the children of Israel the promised land. But he has some expectations to go along with that. He says to Joshua, I expect you to keep my commandments. The same ones I gave Moses, I expect you to keep my commandments. Okay. And I expect you to meditate daily on my word. That's the same expectation God has for me today. He expects me to keep his commandments, and he expects me to meditate on his words every day, to study, to read, to think, to try to understand what God's will for me is in my life. And furthermore, he expects me not to be afraid. He expects me to be courageous. He expects me to step out on faith, not for what I see, but believing and trusting in him. Now, of course, the question is, well, what would have happened if Joshua had not met God's expectation? Well, God's will would have been done anyway, but it just wouldn't have been done by Joshua. That's the same thing for us. Because God has expectations for us, he has blessing for us, and his will be done. Whether we receive the blessings that he has for us is dependent upon us, dependent upon me. And if I'm willing to meet the expectation that God has put out for me. Proverbs 3:6 says, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Seems simple, doesn't it? But sometimes we are unwilling to submit to God's will. And there's some reasons why. First reason is that we have a fear of failure. We don't step out and follow his will because we are afraid of failing. But we shouldn't be. We just should do what he said. Because he's already promised us the blessings. He's already promised us the treasure. But we don't get them because we are afraid to step out of our comfort zone. We're afraid to do what he says because we don't see it. Well, you're not supposed to be able to see it. That's the beauty of it. If we see it, duh. If you don't see it and step out in faith like Abraham, then the world is at our feet. God has so many blessings for us, but we cannot be afraid because that will keep us from those blessings. And then we have the problem of ego. Ego. My ego tells me that I'm smart. Everybody around me tells me I'm smart. Tells me I know what to do. And I let that ego get in the way. I think I know, but God knows. Let me say that again. I think I know, but God knows. And until I accept and be humble and have humility to accept the fact that God knows and submit to him, I will never, ever get where I'm supposed to get. You know, the book I read says ego is edging God out. It's removing God and putting ourselves. And when we do that, that's a problem. That's a major problem. Okay. The one that would never, ever work. There's some things in life that will never, ever work, no matter what. And one of those is edging God out. If we don't keep God the center and the main thing for what we do, it ain't going to work. It will not work. And then the other is listening to others. We listen to our friends, our so-called friends. And they say things and we say, well, we ask them a question, they say, oh, if I were you, I would. Well, you're not me. You're not me. And the fact of the matter is that whatever decision I make, I'm going to be responsible for. So I might listen to you and do what you tell me to do, but you're not going to be affected by it. I'm going to be affected by it. So I may as well stop listening to you and listen to God. So we get in trouble by listening to others. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to others sometimes, but we should be careful of who we have in our inner circle. Who are we asking for advice? Is it someone who's going to say that it's biblically correct or biblically incorrect? Or is it someone who will tell you what they think? I don't want somebody telling me what they think. That's not good enough. I want somebody who's going to say, Biblically, this is what the Bible says. Or biblically, this says that you shouldn't do this. I can listen to that person, but the person is going to tell me what they think or what they would do if they were me. I'm going to be very hesitant about listening to them. So those are things that get in the way of us submitting to God. Our fear of failure and with ourselves, our understanding, and listening to others, especially those who are not biblically based. Okay, they don't have a foundation in the Bible. You need to be careful. Proverbs 3:6 says, "How does submitting to God makes life so much easier? It helps us to make better decisions." If we're following God's directions and it's time to make a decision, it's easy. It's easy. It removes the temptation of sin because I don't have to go through that because I already know what God has in store because I've committed to His will. Okay. That is important to understand. Is that that we're going to be tempted, but we don't want to be led into temptation. We want to stay away from as much temptation as possible. And we want to be able to make good decisions. And we make good decisions, we submit our lives to God. Okay. This verse reminds us of the importance of relying on God's wisdom and guidance in our lives. Relying, not sometimes, but all the time on God's wisdom. Because God knows. Again, I might think I know, but God knows. And I should allow Him to guide me. I should allow Him to guide me. Isaiah 58:11-12 said, "The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs." Okay. Now, why do we need a guide? Why is it important? When you go into some place you've never been before, and that's life, because whatever's going to happen this afternoon, it's going to be new. Now, I might think I already know it, but something's going to happen that's going to be new. So I need a guide that's going to help me when I go through this new adventure. Okay. Why do I need a guide? Because the guide knows where the danger lies. The guide knows where the danger. God knows where the danger lies. Okay. I don't know. I might try to anticipate, but I really don't know. Okay. And the guide knows what to do when the danger does appear. When the danger does appear, God has a way out for me. The Bible says that. Because I'm never going to be in a situation where I'm tempted where there isn't a way out. Now, I may not know the way out, but God has already created a way for me to escape. But I can only do that if I follow God's commandment and accept Him and submit to Him. Okay. The passage also conveys a message that when we align ourselves with God's will and live according to His principles, He will provide for us and use us to help others. When you make good decisions on your personal life, you're able to help others. When you make bad decisions on your personal life, you harm others and you don't have the ability to help them. That's the reality. So we need to submit to God and understand that God has a plan for us. We have to be willing to follow that plan. We have to be willing to follow that plan. In summary, there are always life-changing decisions to make. Okay. Life is full of a fear of making mistakes and choosing what the world may say is the safest right route. We do that sometimes. Okay. But we cannot live in fear. We have to be strong and courageous. We can submit to God and follow Him, or we cannot. It's our option. God gives us that choice. That's the beauty of life, is that God doesn't make us do anything, but He gives us a choice. When I'm counseling someone, I don't tell them what to do, even though sometimes they might want me to. But I say, here is door A, here's door B, here's door C, door D. Now, here's A has its consequences, B has its consequences, C has its consequences, and D has its consequences. You decide which one you want to do. You do A, you do B, you do C, you decide, not me. Because if you make the wrong decision, then you'll come back and blame me. And I don't want you blaming me. Okay. I want you to understand that your responsibility to make the appropriate decision. But you cannot make that decision unless you understand and have a relationship with God and willing to submit to God and His will in our lives. Okay. These verses encourage us to be strong and courageous, trusting in God's guidance and live in obedience to His commands. With faith in God, we can overcome all challenges, make wise decisions, and experience blessings in our lives. What is your Jordan? Everyone has a Jordan. But understanding is that when we reach that Jordan, all we got to do is be strong, and be courageous, and follow the will of God. And we'll be okay. Understanding that the victory is not on this side of Jordan, it's on the other side of Jordan. Be strong and be courageous. And the Bible says, I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Be strong and courageous. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it as always. Enjoy spending time with you and look forward to next time.